have a shepherd's hook in front of my house that I had bird feeders on for a while. I had to take them down because the bird seed just kept getting knocked out, dropped on the floor, growing plants. It just became more trouble than it was worth. But I still have the shepherd's hook, so I thought it'd be nice to hang like a lantern, a garden lantern on it. So I started searching. I found some solar ones, which wouldn't work because the area that it's in, it stays in the shade most of the time, especially in the winter. And so I thought, well, I already have a low voltage lighting set up out there with some sidewalk lights. So I could put a low voltage lantern on there. Searched again, couldn't find any that would fit the bill. Most of them were made for along the sidewalk, 2 or 3 feet off the ground, not really for hanging. So then I thought, well, maybe a battery one. Well, I couldn't find any battery ones local. So I had to drop that idea because I didn't want to order one because you don't know what they're going to look like till you get them. Well, then I thought, well, maybe I should just make my own. I've got some scrap wood. I've got most of the materials I need to build one. But the biggest problem I had was finding a light to put inside of it. I thought, well, I could buy LEDs, buy the wiring, buy the glass tube or bulb. But that ended up probably costing more than the lantern would really be worth. But then I came up with the idea of buying an existing light and using it as the lighting part of the lantern. So I found that Harbor Freight had this little inexpensive Pathway low voltage light. It's plastic. It's only $3.99, so that only cost me $4 for everything I need as far as the lighting part of it. As you can see, we got the plastic globe, the wire, the connector. I'll take this apart later and show you, but we won't use all this stuff. We'll use mainly this part and this part, and then the wiring. We'll take off this tube and the connector. Now, you may not already have a low voltage wiring set up there. You can start one if you want. You have to buy the transformer, the wiring. Adds a lot to the cost. Transformers generally run about $40, $50 or so. So if you don't have a low voltage system, and you do have it in the sun, then you could use a solar light. There are plenty of those little lanterns available. Or you could find a battery one. I did find one online that I liked from what I saw online, but I couldn't see it in the store to see what it really looked like. But if you get those, then you have to alter my plans accordingly to make them fit in your wooden case. Mine's going to be based around what I got from Harbor Freight. Other things I need: oak wood. I had some scrap. Probably won't need as much. Basically, I'll have a parts list on there so you can see what all we need. External connector box to connect the wiring, and then some waterproof connectors in case I need more wiring connections. Exterior glue, real important. I'm going to try to just glue all this together, not use any screws, because screws tend to rust and they tend to stain the wood. So I'm going to try to just glue everything. And then at the top of the lantern, I wanted a little dome that the hook would go in. So I found this at Hobby Lobby. It's like an egg. I'm going to cut it in half, or a third or so, and use it as a dome. So for my project, one of the first things I need to do is disassemble this low voltage light that I got from Harbor Freight. So we've got a little screw here. And another little screw on the other side. And there's our light and our little dome ready. Then we got to cut this wire so that we can get these apart. There we go. Now, due to the way this is made, we could use this entire frame with the black part, or we could use just the lighting part with the dome. Not really sure yet which I'm going to do. Now we took our light apart, so we're going to now start thinking about cutting our wood. But before you do any woodworking, be sure you follow all the safety rules. Be careful with your hands. Be careful with the type of clothes you wear so they don't get caught in the tools. Also, you want certain safety features. Dust mask is very useful and recommended because there's a lot of very fine dust that gets in the air. You might want a better one. I found that these little ones work fine for me. Ear protection. I found these Flints. I get them at Walgreens, or I ordered these actually from Amazon where you got a whole bunch of them, but you can get like a few at a time from Walgreens. Great for protecting your ears. You can hear everything in the room fine. It just takes out the damaging sounds. Then eyewear. I wear glasses. I take them off because I don't like to scratch up the lenses. I'll be honest, I don't always wear the eyewear, but I recommend that you do. It saves getting splinters in your eyes, dust in your eyes, and in case something goes flying through the air, it won't hurt your eyes. Now, first cut's going to be to make the top and the base, which are each 6 inches square. So I'm going to line up on my table saw here, 6 inches. Right about there. Now, I found my table saw isn't always the most accurate. So now I'm going to measure the blade in my fence. Make sure get as close as 6 inches. Maybe a little bit more because you can always make it shorter. You can never make it longer. Looks like I need to go just a touch, a little bit bigger. Next thing I'm going to do is run these pieces through the planer, smooth up the edges. Be careful when you do ingrain because it will tear out. I try to do the ingrain first and I go back and plane down the other sides. I'll just do a couple passes so you don't need to see all of it. But if we turn on our shop vac, fire it up and go. For the two smaller pieces and for the other piece that's going to be at the top as a decoration, I'm going to round over the edge with a 1/2 inch router bit. These router bits have a bearing on them so that as you're routing it, you can ride up against that bearing. But this is hard wood, this is oak, so I want to take just a little at a time. So I've set up a temporary fence which will allow me to just take a small piece and just take a little off, adjust the fence, take a little more until I get against that bearing, then I can take the full width of the 1/2 inch off. As you see, I got just a little bit knocked off of it. Now I'm going to go ahead and round off the rest of it by removing this fence and using the bearing as my support. Now, as you can see on the edge here, oak will tend to burn with a router blade. What we'll do there is just take some sandpaper, sand that down, round to smooth off the edges just a little bit more, but that gives the biggest part of the cut of the wood. Now for our next cut, we're going to be using an oji bit. This gives you a more decorative edge. This will be for the top and the bottom of the lantern. Okay, now as you can see, some of the edges were a little rough here with the router. I think my blade might be just a little dull. Plus you got a little burning. So what you get is one of these foam sandpapers. Go on the edge and just sand that off. Now you can sand the burning off too. It'll take a little bit longer because it gets a little deep in there. But you can see it's starting to lighten up already. And the foam fits the contour of the wood, so it makes it easier to sand it off. I won't show you the whole process here. You also want to go around just all your other, even your edges that aren't burnt, just to kind of smooth them out. I'll have to do a little bit more sanding on those, but this just kind of gives you an idea of what we need to do to get that sanding, get that edge off. Okay, we've got our boards cut, routed the edges. Haven't got them sanded completely clean, but we can do that later. Now we've got to do some little gluing up. This will be the bottom of the frame. We're going to be gluing a little square here that will hold the lamp in. The top frame, which is very similar, so I'll just use this one. It's going to have this decorative piece on top. It's also going to have a dome on top, which I'll cut a little later. Now we get those sanded, we're going to glue our pieces up. This is going to be the top decorative piece on the top of the thing. We'll make sure our grain goes the same direction. Get it as square as we can. And clamp that down. Get our other clamp on the other side. Clamp it down. Again, make sure it's still positioned right. Looks like it is. We're going to drill the hole in the top of our frame that'll hold the globe, the round part of the globe here. We'll fit in we're not going to drill really a hole as much as a circle. Using a big blade here. This is a hole cutting blade. This outside part cuts. I measured it already, so I've got it set to the right size for the globe. We'll go down about 1/4 inch to make that fit tight. And you always hear in woodworking, you never have enough clamps, and this is probably the reason why. You don't just use clamps to hold your wood together, you also use clamps to hold it down for cutting, drilling, whatever. This applies a lot of force on that piece of wood, so I'm going to use clamps to keep it from moving. So we're going to see what happens here. Our circle cut. Now let's see how our lamp fits in it. As you can see, fits in there. Maybe we'd like that a little tighter, but I think that's going to do okay. Now I have to drill a hole in the base support that will fit this part here of the light. After I do that, then I'll know my measurement of distance and I can start cutting on the sides. Now I'm going to measure to see how big a hole this needs to be. Using some digital calipers here. Turn it on and measure. And it looks like it's about 6/8 of an inch or so. Closest bit I have to the size for that base is 3/4 inch. I'm using a 3/4 inch Forstner bit. There's not going to be as much torque on this board so I can hold it by hand. I'm going to drill down almost all the way through so I can run a wire from the side and up. Now you see our base is going to fit into that. We have to run the wire out the side, so we're going to drill a hole through there. My drill press isn't tall enough for me to position under there and use it to drill the hole to get the wire through, so I've got to do it by hand. Now we got a hole, lines up for a hole down there to run a wire. The wire threaded through, coming out this bottom hole. Pull it through to get this to the base. Base is in there. And now we're going to see more what it's going to look like. This will sit on the top. Then we'll make our supports for the sides. And we'll almost have our lamp. We cut our dome that goes to the top of the lantern by screwing it to a board, putting a right angle piece of wood on that board, and then a fence, then going through the bandsaw, setting the distance from the bandsaw for how much dome we want to expose. I decided to add corner brackets to help support the lantern. We were gluing on the end grain of these supports, and that's just not going to be strong enough for this much weight. And then screw a screw in there to hold the bracket. That gives extra support and also adds a little brass looking decoration. I'll drill a hole in the dome and through the wood in order to put the hook to hang the lantern on the shepherd's hook outside. After putting a few coats of spar urethane on the wood to protect it from the outdoors, I'm then ready to wire it into my existing low voltage system. And then our lantern's done. Hope you enjoyed this video.